Okay. So we are holding a daf. Today's daf is daf samech vav. We are holding daf samech hey amud beis by the first wide line of the page. Just to review, we had in our Mishnah a machlokes who has the mitzvah to get married and have children. So the Tanna Kama learned that the man has the mitzvah to get married. A man is the commandment, not the woman, even though it's a mitzvah essay, shaloi hazman grama. It's not a time-dependent mitzvah, but nevertheless, women are potter. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika says they both have the chiyuv. Both man and woman have the chiyuv to procreate. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika, Itma we learned in teaching. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shua ben Levi. There was a disagreement between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Chad Omar, one of these Amoraim said, Halacha Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika, that the halacha is like Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika, that the mitzvah is on both of them to get married. The Chad Omar, and one says, Ein halacha Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika. The halacha is not like Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika, and the mitzvah is only on the man, not the woman. Tistayim, let us bring a proof. The Rabbi Yochanan who the Amma ein halacha. Rabbi Yochanan said the halacha is not like Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika. Why? The Yosef Rababo was sitting. The Kama, now notice Rababo, he was a student. The Kama, and he said Mishmeid Rabbi Yochanan. He said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan said halacha, that the halacha does follow Rabbi Yochanan, and Ba'adrinhu Rab Ami Rab Asi Lapehu. Rab Ami, Rab Asi turned their faces as if they're in disgust that Rabbi Bo got it all wrong, that Rabbi Yochanan said the halacha is not like Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika. And then others have a different version of the story. Rab Chia Ba'aba Omar. Rab Chia Ba'ama was saying in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that the halacha follows like Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika. And Bahadrini Rab Ami, Rab Asi Lapeyu. And Rab Ami and Rab Asi turned their faces because they held that Rabbi Yochanan held ein halacha. So we really have a proof that Rabbi Yochanan, from his two great students, Rab Ami and Rab Asi, is that they probably heard that the halacha is not like Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika. Nevertheless, they did not want to confront the ones who said that the halacha is like, that Rabbi Yochanan said the halacha is like Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika. Now, they just turned their faces in disgust. Now, Amar Rapapa, so Rapapa wants to understand. Bishlama, it makes perfect sense according to the first lashon. Lamanda Amar Rababo Amar. It was Rababo who said the wrong thing in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. And why didn't they want to correct him? Mishum kavoid beikaisa le amru le midi. They were intimidated by Rababo. Rababo had very close relations with the Caesar, the Caesar. And therefore, they didn't want to insult him by saying you got it all wrong. So they just turned their faces in disgust as an indication that that's what you're saying is incorrect. So that's that. According to the version of that story, if Rababo is the subject of the story, then the story makes sense. That it was Rab Chia Ba'aba who was the subject of the story, who misquoted Rabbi Yochanan, and Rab Ami, Rab Asi turned their faces. Why didn't they tell him outright? Rabbi Yochanan did not say so. So that, according to that version, it doesn't make too much sense, the story. Anyway, the bottom line is Rabbi Yochanan, from his students' indication is that Rabbi Yochanan held that the halacha is not like Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika, but rather like the Chachamim, that only the man has the mitzvah approval. So the Gemara says, "My hava Allah." What is the bottom line? Who do we paskin like? Tashma, let's come in here. There was a story that came in front of Rabbi Yochanan. A woman demanded that she wants to get. Why? Because her husband somehow can't have proper relations, and she can't have children. And this story happened. B'chnishta de Kesari. This woman was a member of the shul of Kesari shul. I don't know why that's important to the story, but that's what she was a member of. V'amar, and he said, Yoitzi v'yitin ksuba. She has a right to demand to get a divorce, and you have to give her the ksuba. It's a perfect demand, because normally if a woman makes a crazy demand, we give her the get, but you don't get the ksuba. But here, because the Gemara is assuming that Rabbi Yochanan holds that the woman has a chiyuv to approve. So she has a good demand that she wants to get married to somebody else so that she can have children. If you think that a woman is not commanded to have pruvu, why would she get the ksuba? It's an unreasonable demand to get divorced. She doesn't have the commandment to have to children, so why would she get the ksuba? It must be that really she does have the commandment to have children, and she could demand a divorce. And because it's a proper request, that's why Rabbi Yochanan said she gets a get and you give the ksuba. Answers the Gemara, maybe not so. The reason, really, she does not have an obligation to have children, but she wants to have children for another reason. She has a complaint. What's her complaint? Basically, what the Gemara is going to say is that she's demanding to get divorced because she wants to have children, not because of the mitzvah to have children, but because she wants to have children to take care of her when she gets in old age. Same story happened to Rabbi Ami, and she demanded a divorce. Amr La, she said to him, and Rabbi Ami wanted to say, you can get the divorce, but you're not getting the ksuba. Amr La, so she said to Rabbi Ami, Havli ksuba, please give me my ksuba. Amr La, Zil, go, you don't get a ksuba. Loy mi pakat. You're not commanded to have children. So therefore, it's an unreasonable request to get divorced. Amr La, she said to him, Mesiva de law, what's going to be when I get to old age? Who's going to take care of me? So therefore, that's why I want to have children, not because I'm commanded. Oh, Amma, that's a good request. If that's your reason, vade kafinin, then we force you to get the divorce and we'll give you the ksuba. Ahid asar the kamid Rav Nachman. There was a woman that came to Rav Nachman and she demanded a divorce. And he didn't want to give her the ksuba. Amallah, he told her, loy mi pakta. You're not commanded to have children, so your request for a divorce is unreasonable. Amallah, so she said to Rav Nachman, same request. Doesn't this woman, referring to herself, doesn't she need children for a chutra liyada, like a stick for her hand, umara lekvura, or a shovel to bury her? In other words, maybe my husband is going to die. I need children that are going to come to my funeral or going to give me support in my old age. That's why I want to have children, not because of the commandment of having children. So the Gemara here is leaning towards the Tanakama that there is no commandment on a woman to have children. But nevertheless, she could demand a divorce from her husband if the husband is not capable of having children, and we would give her the ksuba. In this case, we would definitely force the husband to give the divorce and give the ksuba. Now the Gemara says a fascinating story. Yehuda and Chizkiah were twins. But the Gemara says, one of them, the child was only completed at the end of the 9 months. One was ready to come out during the 7th month. In other words, basically, it was one was ready to come out, one was not ready to come out, and this caused her a lot. The woman carrying this, which her name is Yehudis, she was carrying Yehuda and Chizkiah. It's interesting that they gave the child almost the same name as the mother. Her name is Yehudis, and the child, one of the children, the twins, was Yehuda and Chizkiah. Anyway, she was carrying this children. It was a difficult pregnancy. The Vesid Reb Chia, and she was the wife of Reb Chia. Havolot Sar Leda. She had very difficult pregnancy. Not a sakanas nefashos, but very, very difficult. Shnane Mena, she put on a wig or a mask. She came to Reb Chia. She didn't want to know that it's his wife asking the question. Amra, she asked, it's a mepakta period. What do you hold? Is a woman commanded on pru-revu? Amala, he told her, no, a woman is not commanded on pru-revu. So what she did was, after the children were born, she drank a certain potion of a poison that made her impotent. She couldn't have children anymore. She didn't want to get pregnant anymore. Then in the end, Reb Chia found out about it and he was upset. I wish she would have given birth to another set of twins. Because apparently she gave birth to not only 2 sets of twins, and Reb Chia was saying, I wish I had another two children. The Amamar, Yehuda v'Chizkiah ache. Yehuda and Chizkiah are the boys, twin boys of Reb Chia. Pazi v'Tavi, Pazi and v'Tavi, two girls, the name Pazi and Tavi. We go to Samach Vavam and Aleph. Ach v'Sa are the sisters. So, but he was complaining that, I wish I had more children. She shouldn't have drank that potion. Says the Gemara, okay, you're leaning towards that the woman is not mechuyev. We're on Samach Amad Aleph. V'loy mipakta, a woman's not mechuyev in pruruvu. V'amar Rav Acha barav Kitina Rav Yitzchak. Masa, there was a story, Be'isha Achash, with a woman, Shechetzia Shivcha, Bechetzia Baschorim. She was a half a maid and half a free person. Now, because of her situation, how is she a half and half person? Well, she probably was owned by two people. Two people owned this Goyish maidservant, and one of them freed her. So now she's a full Jewish halfway. She's a half Jew and a half Shivcha. So therefore, she can't marry an Eved because she's regular Jewish. She can't marry a regular Jew because she's a half a Shivcha. So the Kaflos Rabbah, they forced the other master, the remaining master who did not free her, they forced her to free her. Of course, she's probably going to pay the money back to her, but she's totally free. They made her a free person, so she could get married to a regular Jew. Now, why would they do that? It must be that a woman is commanded to get married and have children, and that's why they force the owner, the master, to free her, to make her free, so she could be capable of marrying somebody and have children. So we see from here that a woman is commanded on pruruvu. No, minik hefker nahagaba. It's because she couldn't get married to anybody, not Jew, not Goy. She was almost like a zayna. And therefore, she made people. She was going to sell herself for znus. So therefore, in that respect, they forced the master to give her a freedom. And therefore, again, the Gemara probably concludes here that the halacha is that the woman is not commanded on pruruvu. Hadron halacha bal yamimtai. Now we begin the seventh parak. Almana l'kohen gadol. Now, on Almana, it's interesting that, and here's a Daf Yomi coincidence, that today's Daf in the parak is basically about our Parshas Emor. And the Mishnah begins, Almana l'kohen gadol. Almana marries a kohen gadol. That's an illegal marriage. What happens to this widow that marries a kohen gadol? She becomes banned eating truma. Because she had this illegal marital relation, she's not allowed to marry the kohen gadol. She becomes a chalala, and for life, she's banned for life for eating truma. Grusha, divorcee, v'chalutza, the kohen hedya that marries a divorcee, also the woman becomes banned from eating truma. Make sure to note that only a woman becomes banned from eating truma from an illegal marriage, from illegal marital relations. But a man, even though he had an illegal relations, he doesn't become defiled from eating truma. So this is what happened. Almana married a kohen gadol, or a divorcee, grusha, married a kohen hedya. Now, the halacha is that in a normal marriage, when a woman marries a let's say a Israelis marries a kohen, so the wife eats truma. Now she's the kohen's wife. If this woman had an eved, let's say she owned an eved prior to getting married, so then that eved that she has would eat truma, right? She would eat truma because she's eating truma. But here we have two types of situations where a woman brings stuff into the marriage. There's one thing called melug, and one thing is called soina barza. Very simple. Sometimes let's say a woman brings a gold bracelet into a marriage, right? And it's worth $20,000. So we can say that if it's not written in the ksuba, this gold bracelet really belongs to her. But the husband has a right to take this gold bracelet and rent it out to people for weddings or whatever, make money off of it. But when he divorces her or when he dies, she gets back the total bracelet. And if the bracelet goes up in value, she benefits from. And if it goes down in value, she loses it. It's her bracelet. It always remains her bracelet. That's called lug. But the other thing is called, the other way to bring something into the marriage is if the husband, it's like a gift to the husband. She gets married. He says, I have this gold bracelet's worth $20,000. I'm giving it to you, Mr. Husband. And it's written in the ksuba that I brought in this $20,000 bracelet. Now, but when I get divorced, the condition is that you have to give me back $20,000 no matter what. If it goes down in value, you have to make sure that I don't lose money. That's the basic thing. If it goes up in value, it's yours. So it was a gift to you. So that's called Soin Bauzer. Means that it's the ironclad, the principle is guaranteed by the husband. So now we can understand the Mishnah. A woman made an illegal marriage to the Kohen Hedya. So the Mishnah says, she brought in slaves that really belonged to her. That's called Avdei Meluk. And she also brought in slaves that's called Soin Ubarzo. That means that belonged to him. It was like a gift to him. Now, it's a gift to him, but it's a guaranteed gift that she's going to get back these slaves if she divorces her or dies. But if they go up in value, go down in value, if it really belongs to him, he'll just have to pay the difference. Anyway, so she has these two types of malug, two types of slaves. So the Mishnah says, because it's an illegal marriage, avdei malug, the slaves that really are in essence belonging to her, but the husband has a right to benefit from it, but the real ownership of the Evev, the slave, belongs to her. Since she can't eat truma, lo yochlu b'truma, then these slaves can't eat truma. But Avdei Tsoyne Barzel, the slaves that were called Tsoyne Barzel that were brought into the marriage to be the husbands, guaranteed as a gift to the husband, so then yochlu, they could eat, because since the husband is a kohen, he never loses his right to eat truma, so then you can give these types of slaves truma. The Elohein Avdei Melug. What is called an Avdei Melug? So an Avdei Melug means who owns it? She owns it. And therefore, in Mesu, if the Eved would die, Mesu law, it's her loss. Bim Haisiru, if they go up in value, Haisiru law, it's her benefit. So that if they go up in value, it's automatically hers. So when the husband dies and he doesn't benefit anymore from these slaves, it's her slaves, and she can do what she wants with it. Even though it's her slaves, he is obligated to give the food for this slave, and he can benefit whatever the slave, he can, benefit from the Maisi Yadayim, from the handiwork of these slaves, because that's the condition, that because the husband has so much responsibility for his wife, when she gets sick, he has to heal her, and when she gets captured, he has to redeem her, bail her out. So the Chazal said when she brings in these types of slaves, he can benefit from those slaves. So, but really, again, they belong to her. Because she became a halala with this illegal marriage, they can't anymore eat truma. These slaves can't eat truma. But the what's called Tsonim Bazel, ironclad slaves that belong to him. That means it was written into the ksuba contract that she's gifting him a couple of slaves. So it's really his slaves. But she guarantees that the value of those slaves, let's say they're worth $100,000, if she would get divorced from him, she would get a check of $100,000. She wouldn't get the slaves back, but she would get a check of $100,000 back, but it's a gift to him. So in Mesu, if these slaves would die, Mesu Lai, it's his loss. Vim Haisiru, if they go up in value, Haisiru Lai, it's his benefit because they're really his slaves. So comes along the Mishnah, and since he's mostly responsible for these slaves, therefore they can eat the truma. So it depends who's the ownership of the slave. So, but now the Mishnah gives you a regular case, then probably this should have been the introduction to this Mishnah. Bas Yisrael Shnisa Zakayim, a regular Jewish girl that gets married to a Kohen, and she brings slaves. Now, this is a legal marriage, right? A regular Jew marries a Kohen. So, Bein Avdei Melug, Bein Avdei Tzoyim Mazel, whether it's regular slaves, a Melug slave that belong to her, whether it's Tzoyim Barzel slaves that belong to him, they eat in Truma. Why are they eating Truma? Because both the husband and the wife are eating Truma, so the slaves can eat the Truma. Ubas Kohen. Now the Mishnah says another case where you lose eating Truma. Bas Kohen, a girl who was a Kohenes, her father was a Kohen, so all her life she was eating Truma. Shenisas Yisrael, but she married a Jewish man, a Yisrael man. So now, she brought all these slaves in. Bein Avdei Malug, Bein Avdei Tzon and Basel, whether no matter what slaves they are, they belong to him and they belong to her. Nobody eats truma. She's not eating truma because although she was a bas kohen, once she married the Yisrael, she's losing her right to eat truma from the home because she has a new home, and therefore her slaves that come with the marriage are not going to eat truma as well. The Mishnah says, and the Gemara explains like this. Now, how do you know? I understand from the Chumash, it says that when a kohen marries a lady, a Yisraelis, that lady can eat truma. But how do you know if that lady owns another slave? It's her slave, right? How do you know that slave eats truma? In other words, it's a second derivative. A kohen bought a woman because when you get married, it's like a kinyan. So she eats truma. But now you're telling me, and that's the presumption of the Mishnah, that in a normal marriage, the second derivative of a avdei melug, a slave that really belongs to her, would also eat truma because the wife is eating truma. So the Gemara says like this: in the first case scenario, when there was an illegal marriage, the Gemara wants to say, why not? Why is if there's an illegal marriage, does the avdei melug not eat truma? The avdei melug lo yoichle b'truma don't eat truma. Amai, why is that so? Leheve kikinyona shekane kinyan. It should be like his purchase, the kohen's purchase, which is his wife. Another name for his wife is his purchase. That purchased something else. The Tanya we learned in a brisa. Menayin. How do I know? LeKohen shenasa isha. Kohen that marries a woman. Okay, his wife eats truma. The kana avodim. Or he bought slaves, no matter what. Let's say a kohen buys a slave, sheyoichle b'truma, they can eat truma. Shenama, because it's a pasuk in this week's parsha, the kohen kiyikna nefesh kinyan kaspoy hu yoichle boy. Look at the pasuk. A kohen that purchases something that a soul, a body, a human that can be purchased with money, that human now can eat truma. That's what it says. So if you purchase your wife, now your wife, the kohen's wife, can eat truma. Umanayin, how do I know? Liisha shekonsa avodim. But if the wife, in a second derivative, buys slaves, or vavodim shekana avodim, or if a person, the kohen has a slave, and somebody gave money to that slave, that the condition that your owner doesn't have no permission to take it from you. So he gave it specifically for that slave, and that slave turned around and bought other slaves, sheyoichlu b'truma, that can eat truma. Shenamar, the pasuk says, the kohen kiyikna nefesh kinyan kaspoy hu yoichal boy. Now we darshan like this: a kohen kiyikna that will buy. Who does the buying? Not the kohen does the buying, but kinyan kaspoy. The things that he purchased bought something else, another nefesh. So you put the kinyan kaspoy before the word nefesh. The kohen kinyan kaspoy nefesh. If the thing that he purchased bought something else, like the isha bought a slave, kinyan shekane kinyan oichel would eat truma. So why is it that if there's an illegal marriage, why is it that the woman cannot feed her purchase truma? So the Gemara says a very simple reason. If she would be allowed to eat truma herself, machal, yes, she would be able to feed her avodim. But now she's in this illegal marriage. She's in a grusha for a kohen, or she's an almana for a kohen gadol. So she herself can't eat. So her purchase, eina machal, cannot feed other people. So the Gemara says, "V'loi, is that always true? V'harei orel v'chol tmeim, any kohen that's orel, or any kohen that means uncircumcised, or any kohen that is tameh, he himself can eat truma because he's tameh or he's uncircumcised. She'eina oichlem, they can't eat truma. Uma'achilin, and they could feed their avodim truma. So we see that rule doesn't hold water. And says the Gemara, there's a very big difference. There, an oral and a tameh, and not forever. The oral could give himself a bris milah, and the tameh could go to the mikvah. So it's not a permanent loss of eating truma. So technically, they're capable of eating truma. This woman, as soon as she had that illegal relations with her husband, she's now defiled, banned for truma for life, and therefore she can't eat truma. So the Gemara asks just one question on that. The mamzer case is like this. Here's the picture up over here just to get it. A man had a daughter, Yisrael. She had a daughter, Rachel. Okay, she married a kohen. Okay, she married a kohen. the Kohen had a daughter that together with this Kohen. Now the Rachel can eat truma, right? Because she's now married to a Kohen. So all her life she's eating truma. The Kohen died and they had a child, Chana. Now, as long as Chana was alive, Rachel could eat truma. Chana went ahead and married a mamzer. So Chana, by being married to the mamzer, doesn't eat truma. But together they had a son, Dasan, an illegal mamzer son called Dasan. So now, when you ask this Kohen, although he died, did he leave over any children? Yes, he left over children. Chana. Is she alive? No. Is anybody that Chana left over that it's alive? Yes, Dasan. There's a grandson, Dasan the mamzer. So this mamzer is the grandson of a Kohen, technically. And because he's around, now Rachel could continue eating truma. Because a woman, even though the Kohen dies, can eat truma as long as this child from that union, from that original union. So we see a case, what the Gemara is saying, is that the mamzer himself, is he Israel or whatever, cannot eat truma, and yet she is almost causing that his grandmother to be able to eat truma. So the Gemara says, of course not. It's not the mamzer causing the grandmother to eat truma. It's the previous marriage to the Kohen that's eating truma. So that's very different than our case. Kinyan oichel kamar, kinyan oichel kamar, kinyan oichel machel, she'ena oichel, ena machel. It means that kinyan oichel means the original kinyan, the original purchase of the woman, of the wife of the Kohen. That was the one that's feeding this woman. That's why she continues to eat truma as long as she has a grandson, a granddaughter or a grandson that's still alive from the original marriage. But this woman that's made the illegal marriage, that in our Mishnah, this woman married to the Kohen, the Grusha married to the Kohen, Almana Kohen Gadol, it's an illegal marriage. She can never eat truma, and therefore she's the one that has to feed the avodim. It's only dependent on her. If she can eat truma, then her avodim can eat truma. And it's because she can't eat truma, she cannot feed her children, her avodim truma. Okay, so now that's the first story of the. So midai raisa, according to the way we learn, midai raisa, the woman cannot feed her avodim. The avodim belonging to her, truma. Okay, that's what the first teretz of the Gemara says. Now the Gemara gives two more terutzim. Rava says midaraisa mechla achle. Midaraisa, maybe you can say that this woman, although she herself is an illegal marriage and she's banned from truma for life, she could feed her avodim truma. But Rabbanan hu de gazaru, the rabbi said no, kedei ta'imar, because she should say, we want this marriage to break up. You see, she's a grusha for a Kohen Hedyot, and we want the marriage to break up. And she'll say to herself, now that I'm married to this Kohen, what benefit am I getting? Ani eini eichas, I'm not eating truma. Avodai, my slaves, eina oichla, not eating truma either. So she doesn't want to say it outright. Zoinihi etzlai, I am probably considered to be zoina to him, an illegal person to him. And she's going to make all this kind of problems. She's going to give her a divorce. So it's Rabbanan said that, you know what, we're not going to allow her to benefit from being married to the Kohen by feeding her avodim truma, because we want the marriage to break up. And therefore, she's going to say, what benefit am I getting? I can't feed truma to my avodim. So Rav Ashi has agreed. Midaraisa, she probably could feed her avodim. But Rav Ashi gives another teretz. Gzeira shemetachil acher misa. We're afraid that maybe she'll continue to feed the avodim after the death of her husband. And after the death of her husband, after the death of the husband, so then we are afraid that they'll continue to eat. But really, since she's not eating truma and the original husband is dead, they're not supposed to continue to eat truma. You see, so the Gemara asks back, Bas Yisrael shenisu the Kohen. If you have a regular Bas Yisrael that's married to a Kohen, loy tachel, she should not be allowed to feed her avdei melug truma. Gzeira shema tachil achamisa. Maybe she's going to feed them after her death, after his death. And why do we learn in our Mishnah that when a Bas Yisrael marries a Kohen, no problem. The Avdei Melug, the slaves that belong to her, can always eat Truma. If you're always concerned that, maybe the husband's going to die and they'll continue to eat Truma, so you wanted to make that Gzera by a regular, normal case when it wasn't an illegal marriage. Elo Amar Rashi, Rav Ashi said and explained himself. What it means is like this. Let's say a kohenes. She, all her life, she's a daughter of a kohen. She was eating truma, and she had avodim. Then she got married to somebody, okay, and she continued to feed truma. Let's say she married a kohen, and she continued to eat truma, and then that kohen died. So she went back home, and continued to eat truma because she comes from a kohen family. Now she's an almana. She goes back, now marries the kohen gadol, right? If she marries the kohen gadol, so she goes back to eating truma by her husband. When husband dies, right, she goes back home. Wait a second. She cannot continue to feed her avodim truma from her home because she became somebody banned from truma for life. And that's the gezerah over here. So ba'almana kohenes, the asri lairuye, because an almana who married a kohenes, she comes from a kohenes family. Her family is a kohenes. She always ate truma all her life. The asri lairuye shall come to be lenient because she's going to say like this: mikara, when I was first when I was alone in my home, achle truma de beinasha, a truma of my home, because I come from a kohen family. In I married this person, right? This kohen gadol. Achli truma de gavrei. My servants continued to eat truma because I was married to the kohen gadol. Although I was not allowed to eat truma, but my servants continued to eat truma, just like they ate truma before I got married to the kohen gadol. Then this woman says, now the kohen gadol dies. V'hashta hadri leila milse kamaisa. She goes back home. She says, my slaves can now eat truma from originally, just like they always ate truma when we lived in my home. V'layada, they won't know. She's not going to know to make the difference that in the very beginning, before she got married to the kohen gadol, she was not defiled from eating. She wasn't banned from truma. So because she could eat truma, she could feed her avodim truma. But because she married the kohen gadol, she became a chalala, and she can never eat truma. So now that the husband died, the kohen gadol died, and she goes back home, she can't feed her avodim truma. And that's the problem. They may continue to eat truma, so we want them to stop eating truma as soon as she starts an illegal marriage. So the Gemara says, Tainach almana kohen kohenes. Almana marrying who always was a kohen, so she ate truma from her home. What about an almana bas Yisrael? She never fed her avodim truma. Not every kohen gadol that's marrying an almana is the almana a kohenes from birth. Maybe he married an almana who's a bas Yisrael and that never fed her avodim truma, so you don't have that problem. Since they're both called almanas, they made one gezerah no matter what. The bottom line is that if there's an illegal marriage, almana to marrying a kohen gadol, so then her avodim never eat truma. So we learned three things over here. One, that according to one opinion, it's doiraisa, that her slaves don't eat truma. And according to two terutzim, it's the rabbanim made a gzera that her slaves don't eat truma because of this illegal marriage. Either we want them to break up, or it may lead the avodim to continue eating truma way after the kohen dies. Nu Gemara. We said before that if a woman brings, let's use the example of a bracelet. A woman brings in a gold bracelet that belonged to her grandmother. It's $20,000. And she says to her husband, you can keep it. It's yours. Write it in a ksuba. But when we get divorced or if you die, I get the $20,000 back. Okay? And guaranteed. If the price of gold goes up, it's your benefit. If it goes down, it's your loss. But you always have to give me $20,000. That's called shum. That's called, another name for that is tzoyin barzel. Shum. Shum means you made an appraisal. Hamachneses shum labala. Now here, now she regrets it. She says, okay, I don't want to take the money back. I want the gold watch because it really belonged to my grandmother. Can she change her mind and say, I want it back? So the Mishnah says, and of course, if it's worth less, then the husband will have to pay the difference. And if it's worth more, she'll pay back the difference. But the item itself, she wants to keep because it has sentimental value to her. So the question is it totally the husband's once it's written into the ksuba and no backsies? So the Mishnah, the Bryce, the teaching was like this: Hamachneses shom labala. Someone gives something that was appraised as a gift to the husband. He aimeres, she says, Kela ani naitalas. I want to take it back. Who aimer? No, you can't take it back. Dumb money, I said. I guaranteed you the money. I'm giving you the money. Hadin in me. Who gets the right? So the Gemara says it's a machlokes. Rabbi Yehuda says, let's go to Amud Beis. Hadin ima. She has the right to request back the item itself. Rabbi Ami says din imoi. The din belongs to him, that he has no right to collect it back. So the Gemara says like this: Rabbi Yehuda Amar hadin ima, that it's her right to collect it back. Mishum shevach beisavia, because this belonged to her. This has sentimental value. Vida hava, this is hers, and therefore, since it's hers, therefore she can request it back. Rabbi Ami says kadin imoi, that it really is his. Why? Because you wrote it in, and kivin da'amamah, since we learned in our Mishnah, in mesu loy v'masira asir loy, if it goes up in value or down in value, who benefits from it? The husband, and therefore it's really the husband. So therefore you can't ask it back. It's written in the ksuba, I'm guaranteeing you $20,000 in exchange for this gold bracelet that you gave me. So therefore it's totally the husband. Since it's his responsibility to make her whole, to so that she doesn't lose any money on it. That's why the Mishnah says he eats truma, and therefore same thing over here. It's really his. Amar Rav Safra. So Rav Safra says, Rabami, you're trying to bring a proof from our Mishnah. Mi Katani, does our Mishnah say by the slaves, Avdei Tsoinu Barzel, right? That Tsoinu Barzel slaves are the same thing of that they made an appraisal of what these slaves are worth. But does the Mishnah outrightly say Mi Katani Vehein Shaloi? Does the Mishnah outright say they belong to the husband? It says it just says that he is responsible for it, and therefore, he benefits from the up and down value of the market, but it's not his. People who are in the option markets understand this, that you have a call option doesn't mean you own it. You have a right to benefit on the price fluctuations of the stock or the commodity, but you don't own it. So that's what the Gemara is comparing this to, that although it's written into the contract, it's who says it's totally his? He just gets the benefit from that. Katani, ula'olam lavdidaininu, maybe it's not his. So if that's the case, if it's not his, then why would that slave eat truma? Is if he's only responsible for it, would that give him a right to feed the slave truma? What now we learned in the Mishnah. Let's look at this Mishnah. Yisrael shesach para mikoyin. Yisrael rented a cow from a kohen. Harei zeh yachelenu kashina truma. He rented the cow. So who owns the cow? The kohen. So therefore, you could feed that cow kashine vetch of truma. That's animal food, even if it's truma animal food. Why? Because the kohen owns the cow. Kohen shesach par Yisrael. But if the kohen rented a cow from a Jew, that means the Jew owns the cow. Even though the Yisrael is responsible, he can't feed it truma because who owns the owner is the kohen. Even though it's rented to the Jew and the Jew is responsible for the cow, he can't feed it truma. And same in the opposite case, if the kohen owns the cow and the Yisrael is the renter, since it's the kohen's, he could feed it truma. So we see from there that although they're responsible, even though they're responsible, they can't feed a truma. We look at the original owner. Responsibility, or the one who's benefiting from the price fluctuation, so to speak, doesn't necessarily own it. So why in our Mishnah do we allow the husband to feed truma to these avodim? So the Gemara says, "V'tizbra," does that make perfect sense? even when somebody rents something, even though you're chayav in case it was stolen or lost, you're not responsible if it goes up and down in value, or if some oinus happens, something that's not your fault. So it's not a total responsibility. It's like the seif of the Mishnah. Yisrael shesham para mikoyin. Yisrael that took full coverage. Let's say when you rent a car, you take full coverage from a para, from a kohen, total responsibility. So now the Yisrael owns it, even though it belongs to the kohen, but the full coverage is by the Yisrael. He took full ownership. Not ownership. He took full responsibility. He can't feed a truma. Aval, and here's the point: kohen shesham para Yisrael. If a kohen took full coverage from a cow that really belongs to a Jew, but he's going to return it, but he took full responsibility. So then, yachilenu kashine truma, because he has the full responsibility, he could feed a truma. So back to our Mishnah, it's possible that these avodim really don't totally belong to the husband, just he has full responsibility on them, and he takes the benefit of their price fluctuations, and therefore he could feed them truma, but really the ownership belongs to her, and therefore at the end of the marriage, if they're getting divorced, she could say that it's mine, I really want it back, and therefore don't give me money, give me my heirloom back. So we'll just finish up the Gemara over here in one more line. Yosef Rabba, Rabbi Yosef Shil Pirka Dav Kivi Yosef Hami Tanya Kavos Yehuda Tanya Kavos Rabami. You could say either way, two brises either way. Tanya Kavos Rabami, like Rabami, that really they belong to him. The Avdei Tzoyin Bazo are 100% his. Yoitzim b'shem ba'ayim b'elish. If the man, the owner, the husband knocks out the eye or the teeth of these avodim, they go free because they're really his slaves. Avloi l'isha. They're no more the woman's slaves. They're totally the husband's slave. Tanya Kavasi Rabbi Huda Hamachnesa Shum Labala Imrotza Balimkar Lo Yimkar. A woman brings, let's say, a gold watch to her husband, and they wrote it in the ksuba and Soin Barzo. If the husband wants to sell it, it's an heirloom belonging to the wife. Lo Yimkar, he's not allowed to sell it. Even if he guaranteed as a replacement for that watch, he guaranteed to give her a piece of land. Imrotza Balimkar Lo Yimkar can't sell it because it's hers, even though he benefits from the price fluctuations of it. Let's say one sold it without the other one's permission. The husband sold it or the wife sold it because they needed to bring food into the house. This was brought before Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, and he said, that the Baal could invalidate that sale. You can't sell it. So we see a possibility, the way Rabbi Huda understands it, that when you bring in the watch into the marriage, it's the husband owns the watch, but it's like a call option. He benefits from the price fluctuations of it, and he's guaranteeing the payment, but he doesn't necessarily own it. So at the end of the marriage, according to Rabbi Huda, she can say, I want this heirloom back. Rabbi Ami says, no, she can't do it. It's 100% belonging to the husband. Okay, so we can stop right over here.